Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock. It's time for another video, and today I'm going to be doing another deep dive. Now, this is where I take a really in-depth look at a creator or a company, and I talk about the history of that creator and the history of that company, and what we can learn from the decisions that were made during the course of that story. And today I'm going to be speaking about a very good friend of mine, somebody who I've known for many years, and somebody who I genuinely think has shaped the way that magic is done in the UK. And I'm talking about Mark Bennett. This is going to be the rise, the fall, and the rise again of Mark Bennett, the bar magician who built an empire. You see, here's the thing. Mark is somebody who turned a 5-night-a-week nightclub gig into a blueprint for the UK's first magic bar. He survived a recession, built a theatre-style club that's still thriving, launched a production company, and still somehow keeps creating products magicians use all over the world. Mark Bennett is an absolute inspiration, and like any true entrepreneur, he's had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So in this week's episode of the deep dive, we are going to dive deep into Mark Bennett's career, and we're going to look at what lessons we can learn by looking at the choices that he made. Okay, chapter 1, Baptism by Fire. Mark doesn't just come from your uncle shows you a coin trick cliche, or hey, my uncle pulled a coin from behind my ear, or I had a magic set bought for me by Paul Daniels when I was 2 years old. His origin story in magic, he was in college working in simulation tech when he sees an out of this world from a classmate, Simon Virtue. He buys Royal Road to Card Magic, learns a handful of tricks, and then fate smacks him around the face. You see, at just 20 years old, September the 12th, 1992, he gets made redundant. Now, anybody that's been made redundant will tell you that's a horrible feeling, and you kind of don't really know what you're going to do, where you're going to do, where you're going to go. That everything is kind of becomes in limbo, right? So he got made redundant, but instead of panicking, he walks into a Portsmouth nightclub on their opening day, shows the general manager a few routines, and lands a 5-night-a-week gig, 5 hours a night, £10 an hour. Overnight, he's gone from unemployed to a full-time magician. Now, to be clear, this is an entrepreneurial mindset. And honestly, Mark Bennett would not have done what he's done or achieved what he's achieved in this industry if he wasn't an incredible entrepreneur. You see, going into this nightclub was a trial by fire. He learned fast that in a nightclub, you don't have patter, you have noise. Your magic needs to be visual, it needs to be punchy, there needs to be an instant reset, sponge balls, colour changes, and card on ceiling. Wagner's pin-in card version was something that he really relied on. Over the years, he stapled thousands of cards to the ceiling, and each one of them is a badge of survival. During this period, he also built a philosophy that he still teaches today. 3 openers, 3 closers, and R&D in the middle. So the first lesson we can learn from Mark here is you need to test your magic in the harshest rooms. If it can survive a 2 a.m. drunk, it'll fly by anyone. I remember being on a multi-magic gig. If you don't know what that is, it's where you like 5 or 6 magicians get booked. And I was on this multi-man gig with 5 or 6 other magicians, and one of them was this kind of legend of the UK magic industry. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was kind of a legend of the UK magic industry. And I watched this person go out and perform. It was 2 hours. It was a very busy room. It was a busy corporate sort of big table setup type thing. Lots of big tables. And it's one of those things that a difficult gig to do and do well unless you're really experienced. And this person who's built a reputation of for themselves of one of the best like magicians on the planet, you could tell this person was very, very nervous about even just going up to tables. You'd see him standing against the wall, working himself up, going up to a table, and then just kind of stopping and walking backwards. And it wasn't his style. It wasn't where his style of magic worked well. And that's something you can learn from Mark. If you can do magic in the harshest rooms, if you can do magic in a nightclub, if you can do magic in a military base, if you can do magic to drunk people in a corporate event, then you can literally do it anywhere. I always say that the most important thing with magic is flight time. The more you do something, the better you get at it. And that is something that Mark absolutely did very early on in his career. We'll call Chapter 2 the Hippodrome years, because you see, London called, and Mark moved to the Hippodrome, Leicester Square, one of the busiest tourist clubs in the capital. He worked in the room for 6 years, hundreds of nights, grinding out tricks for table after table. During this time, he trimmed his repertoire down to what works for strangers in loud venues. He became ruthless. If a routine doesn't kill every single time, it's gone. He turned himself into the host as much as the magician. But then the circuit shifted, various slots and VIP magicians' nights fade, and by the early 2000s, the nightclub magician as a profession really was vanishing. So there's two things that we can learn from this. The first is you have to make sure that your body of tricks, your repertoire, you have to make sure that your repertoire is absolutely bulletproof. I asked somebody at a convention once, what's your 1,000 timer? And they went, oh, I've got 1,000 timers. I was like, okay, well, show me one of them. And he did it wrong like 4 times in a row. And I was like, that's not the definition of a 1,000 timer. The definition of a 1,000 timer is doing something that you can literally do in your sleep without even thinking, without even focusing. You can do this thing inside out, back to front, and left way, sideways. And that only comes from performing it over and over again. And making sure you've got a really strong repertoire is key. The second lesson we can learn is what works today won't always exist tomorrow, and you've got to be ready to pivot. I experienced this when I first started working professionally. I did a lot of restaurants, and for years I was working restaurants. I was working more restaurants than pretty much anybody, I would guess. I was doing a restaurant on a Monday, a restaurant on Tuesday, one on a Wednesday, one on a Thursday, one on a Friday, 3 on a Saturday, 2 on a Sunday. Basically, I didn't have time to get my own gigs. I just did restaurants all the time. And I had extra restaurants that I was giving to other people. And then one day, the restaurant went into administration, company went into administration. I lost all of my work overnight. I was not ready to pivot. I went from having a really good income within my magic business to literally having nothing overnight. Learn from Mark Bennett. You have to be ready to pivot. So let's call Chapter 3 Learning the Bar Trade. Because, as I said, instead of clinging, Mark pivoted. He became a bar manager and then a troubleshooter. He learned how to run stock, balance P&L, manage security, deal with staff politics. He understood the entire machine of a nightclub and a bar. Now that matters, and the reason it matters, because in 2006 he was going to build his own. And so the lesson we can learn from this, and what Mark did during this 2-year period, is know the business, not just the magic. If you don't understand how the bar actually makes money, your magic venue will collapse. I've talked over and over again on this channel about the importance, the absolute importance of understanding the business of magic. If you want to be a full-time pro, or even a part-time pro, if you want to make money from magic, then you have to understand the business of magic. If you want to open up a bar, if you want to open up a magic venue, you need to know everything about running that venue, inside out, upside down, left way, sideways. If you want to become a professional magician that's out gigging, you need to understand marketing. You need to understand sales. You need to understand the customer journey, customer service. There's so many different things that you have to learn. And that's why most people fail when they become a professional magician, because they don't know that stuff and they don't want to learn it. I've said this on the channel over and over again. 20% of businesses will fail in the first 5 years. And out of the 20% that succeed, only 20% of those will fulfill their true potential. And the reason for that is because most businesses, the people that set them up and start running them, they don't care about learning about all of the boring stuff. If you're a painter and you want to set up your own painting company, you just want to paint. If you're a magician and you're setting up your own magic company, you just want to do magic. Unfortunately, that's a small part of what you need to learn if you're going to rely on this business for your own income. Mark knew that, and that's why he learned everything he needed to know about the bar trade. Okay, chapter 4 was the Pure Smoke Bar in Manchester, which then led into Illusions. In June 2006, the Printworks Manchester, Mark opens the UK first dedicated magic bar called Pure Magic Bar. The concept was simple: a Mullica-style station, magician in the middle, customers on both sides, service still flowing. He hires incredible magicians like Sam Hurst, Andy Bertram, Matthew Wright, Alex Fisher, the amazing Stephen, and others. And for an 80-seat bar, the takings are excellent. You know, Mark talks about how he would take £8,000 to £9,000 a week, which is absolutely incredible. You know, he actually got my friend Nemid Phoenix, who we talk about a lot on this channel, to become the manager of Manchester. Eventually, when it became Illusions, he would become the manager of Illusions. But you know, at the time, he was running Pure Magic Bar, right? Now the owners wanted 15,000 a week, not 9,000 a week. They cared more about filling the 3,500 capacity nightclub downstairs. Mark pushed back, they clashed, and he walks away. And here's the thing, and this is another example of showing his entrepreneurial spirit. Within a year, he came back and reopened the site as Illusions Magic Bar Manchester. This time he was the boss. The same spot, now falling under his own brand, Illusions. And for 3 years, it does incredibly strong numbers. This is the period of time where Nemeth was manager. But then the hammer falls. Virgin sells the site. He's told he's got hours to clear out, and it's gone. That's why venue directories today still list Illusions Magic Bar Manchester long-term closed. So here's the lesson we can learn from this. Prove the model, but don't ignore the landlord. Venue success is always hostage to the property owner's agenda. Mark took what he built with Pure Magic Bar, made it his own with Illusions Magic Bar, and made it incredibly successful. The reason that the Magic Bar in Manchester failed wasn't because of Mark, it was because of the landlord pulling the plug. Sometimes external factors can influence you, and it's something that's completely out of your control. Now, chapter 5, we need to talk about Illusions in Bristol, which now, while Manchester was still running, Mark mortgaged his house and opened up Illusions Magic Bar in Bristol in 2007. And Illusions became his flagship. It was a bar built around close-up magic, a back wall covered in signatures from legends like Doc Eason, Danny Garcia, Michael and Ma. Dan Chard is the first customer and later became a house magician. And for 11 years, all the way through to 2018, Illusions became a Bristol institution. It survived the 2008 crash, became a huge part of Bristol, built a loyal audience, and even had customers booking front row seats before shows. It was incredible. It was ridiculously successful. And think about it, he opened it in 2007, and we went into a recession in 2008, and yet it didn't just survive, but it thrived. But here's the thing, when tuition fees rose to £9,000, students' disposable income collapsed. People pre-drink, watch 20 minutes and leave. Mark enforced rules: if you're at the bar, you buy a drink. But honestly, at that point, the writing was on the wall. And he made a very difficult decision, which was in 2018, he closed Illusions cleanly, with Colin Skinner as the final magician to perform. So what's the lesson we can learn here? Well, kill your darlings. A beloved brand is only valuable if it's profitable. Closing Illusions wasn't failure, it was a strategy. Now, that's an important thing for you guys to understand. You know, sometimes you have to take one step backwards to take 3 or 4 steps forwards. Sometimes we look at things in a very black and white way. Oh, closing this venue would be a failure. I have failed, but sometimes that's not the case. You know, especially when you're an entrepreneur, like I said, Mark, like all good entrepreneurs, have had so many highs and so many lows. And this is a perfect example. And also, it wasn't really too much of an issue because he already had something else that he could put all of his time and effort into. And we're going to talk about that next. But the thing you need to understand is sometimes it's difficult when you split your focus to be able to do everything really well. Sometimes it's really important to just focus on one thing rather than doing 5 or 6 things badly, doing one thing brilliantly. And that's what's happened here, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. Okay, so chapter 6, we'll call it Smoke and Mirrors. Even before Illusion shut, several years before Illusion shut, Mark launches a new venue, Smoke and Mirrors, which is very different to Illusions in that it was a theatre pub. Now, the model was a pub at the front with close-up magic on the weekends, and then a secret 40-seat theatre behind a hidden door. Pre-show close-up at the tables, and then a seated show with house magicians like Dan Chard and Richard Newman and Mark Bennis himself. Tickets started when they first opened as around about £10, £11, but eventually rose to over £30, and still they sell out. On TripAdvisor, it's rated as one of the top things to do in Bristol. Celebrities have attended, magicians have done guest spots, and the hosted experience means audiences don't just see magic, they live it. Smoke and Mirrors has become Mark's flagship thing. It's the thing that a lot of people know him for. It's an incredible venue, and as somebody who has filmed so many products there, there's a certain type of magic. And what can we learn from this? Well, add certainty. Bars are chaotic. Theatres are predictable. By combining them, you're guaranteed a successful venue. But it's all about risk taking as well. That's the other thing. Mark has never been scared to take risks. Opening Smoke and Mirrors while Illusions was running was a risk. Having 2 venues at the same time was a risk. It would have been very easy for him to just rest on his laurels and coast by with Illusion's magic part. But then when the external factors meant that Illusions had to close, he wouldn't have had anything to fall back on. By taking that risk and opening Smoke and Mirrors and making that a success, it meant he could pivot at just the right time. And here's the thing, sometimes it's scary making a decision that is risky. But as an entrepreneur, if you never take a risk, you're never going to move ahead. Look, here's the thing. I've taken lots of risks in my career. Have they all paid out? Absolutely not. I've had many things that I've taken a risk on not work. And I've had other things work really, really well. But the bottom line is I wouldn't be where I am right now if I hadn't taken several risks. Ask yourself a question. What's the best possible scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And if you can live with the worst case scenario, then go for it. That's exactly what Mark did. And it was great because when he was put into a position where Illusions was no longer financially viable to run, he could just pivot to Smoke and Mirrors. Chapter 7, the MB Magic Productions. Because here's the other thing that you need to understand. Mark is a true entrepreneur insofar as he's always looking for more options. He's always looking for more ideas. He's always looking to take other income streams, because that's important, right? When you're running your own business, having multiple income streams is important. If you've just got income streams from one place, like I did when I had, all of my eggs in one basket, I was just going out and doing restaurants for the same company. When they no longer wanted me, I lost all of my income overnight. The best way to deal with that is by having multiple income streams. And Mark understands that, which is why he set up MB Magic Productions. And that happened after Illusions closed. He lent into the production and the creative side of the industry. He launched MP Magic Productions, a company that develops and markets magic worldwide. And he's had a ton of releases. Your Round, The Noble One with Matthew Wright, Air Flight, this goes on and on and on. It's looking at his production output and what he's actually bought out is, it just shows how eclectic his mind is. Through MB Magic, Mark shifts from bar owner to creator and producer, building a new revenue stream that leverages his decades of live room experience. And the lesson to learn from this is it's really important to have those multiple income streams. It's really important. Look at your business. If you're a professional magician or you make money from magic, ask yourself a question. Where is all that money coming from? Because if all of your income is coming from one place, you might want to consider not putting all your eggs in one basket. You might want to consider seeing how you can actually diversify, how you can create something within the same niche or within the same infrastructure that allows you to create other income streams outside of you going out and performing. Okay, let's call Chapter 8 Community Building. Mark doesn't just run shows, he builds ecosystems. He set up the British Magic Round Table, giving amateurs stage time and creating a pipeline for new magicians. He insists on training house magicians to work in a mini trade show style, entertaining at the front, hook at the back, sell the next round. He keeps himself on stage, hosting and comparing, and make himself the cultural anchor of the scene. And this is important. This is what he's done. Like I said, he's built an ecosystem. He wants, the work that he's done through MB Magic makes more people, more magicians within this industry aware of who he is. He's on the council at the Magic Circle. Being on the council at the Magic Circle gives him a certain amount of credibility and a certain amount of influence and gets people to know who he is and what he does. Being on the council at the Magic Circle allows him to have a bigger name, so when he releases magic, more people know who he is and what his magic is. He collaborates with lots of individual people. He's collaborated with J.B. Williams, with Matthew Wright many times, with me. So collaborating with these people basically brings a new audience to him every single time. The Bristol Magic Round Table then takes his credibility as a creator and a producer and brings all of these magicians together and gives them a place where they can see lectures, where they can work with each other, where they can experience what Smoke and Mirrors is all about. And that's important because then that helps feed interest in Smoke and Mirrors, so that when the shows are being sold for Smoke and Mirrors, you've got magicians that are happy to work with him in the close-up magic. You've got magicians that are happy to work with him. The whole thing is just one big ecosystem, and it's a very, very smart how he's done that. Okay, let's quickly talk about Chapter 9. We'll call this the IP storm, because we can't tell this story without mentioning the controversy. In 2024, 2025, Mark's Air flight launches, and reviews are strong, shops stock it wildly, but the magic world is in uproar over Yigal Masika's aggressive IP claim. I got involved in all of this. I'm not going to talk about it too much here now. I don't want this to be all about Yigal Masika. But I created a documentary called The Dissolution of Yigal Masika, and I talked about patent bullying. I talked about Yigal Masika threatening Mark, and you can go and watch that video if you want to. But Mark's air flight became part of that conversation. It was pulled from shops, debated in forums. It was Murphy stopped selling air flight basically, and fortunately, after everything was all said and done and Mark's side of the story came out, Murphy's decided to put Air Flight back into their roster and started stocking it again. The fact is that Air Flight is Mark's release and it is widely sold. Masika's responses and takedown notices existed, and the controversy reminded magicians everywhere to document timelines and prototypes and prior art, etc., etc., etc. But here's the thing that we can learn from that, and this is why I'm bringing it up. Don't let people bully you. Don't go down without a fight. Compared to Yigal Masika, Mark Bennett was a very small fish in a very large pond. He only set up his production company a few years before. He'd only brought out a handful of tricks. He was building a name for himself, just like he has in every industry that he's disrupted, but he wasn't anywhere near as big as Yigal Masika. And it would have been very easy for him to stand down. It would have been very easy for him to say, yes, Mr. Masika, no problem. I will not sell Air Flight. You're absolutely right. Let me give you the money that you've requested. But he didn't do that. He fought. He didn't allow Masika to win, basically. And Murphy's started selling the product again. So from Mark's point of view, he won. And that's important because sometimes when you're a entrepreneur, you have to stand up for yourself. Sometimes you are going to get yourself into situations where there are going to be people that are trying to push you down. You're going to get into situations where it's difficult to do business because of this external factor or that external factor, and it's very easy to roll over and play dead. But Mark didn't do that. What Mark did is he focused on fighting, and not just fighting, but winning. I think that's one of the most important lessons that we can learn from Mark Bennett. Okay, so the final chapter, chapter 10, Legacy and the Bigger Map. Where are we today in 2025? Well, today, Smoke and Mirrors thrives. MP Magic continues to release products. Mark talks openly about his long-term vision. He wants the Bristol Magic Lounge, combining the best of illusions and Smoke and Mirrors in one under-the-roof experience. A close-up bar, a theatre, and a production house all in one. He has big, big, big dreams, which, if we look at his history within this industry, he will absolutely realize. Because he's gone from a nightclub residency in 1992 to an international controversy in 2025, Mark Bennett has reinvented himself time after time after time. And here's the most important lesson we can learn from Mark Bennett, which is dream big and make it happen. If you don't dream big, if you don't believe in yourself, then you're not going to have anyone else and believe in you either. The way that Mark has continued to succeed in this industry is by 100% believing in himself, letting the world know what he wants to achieve, and then going out and making it happen. And it's been difficult, and it's been hard, and there's been ups and there's been downs, and he's had to close venues, and he's had venues close on him for no reason at all, and he's been let down by people, and he's had difficult situations to deal with. But throughout all of that, he is still one of the most respected people in the UK. He has still created and helped create more close-up magicians than almost anyone I know of in the UK. He is the person that has taken people that want to become a performer. Look at Jay Blunt, for example. Jay Blunt has gone from working in a McDonald's to being one of the house magicians on stage at Smoke and Mirrors almost every single week. That's because of Mark Bennett. Mark Bennett continues to dream big and then do whatever it takes to turn those dreams into reality. And I think that's the most important lesson. The most important lesson is, if you want something, you have to make it happen. Don't just watch it happen, make it happen. That is so important. A lot of people would say, I want my own magic venue, and it'll not happen. A lot of people say, I want to be a close-up magician, and it won't happen. A lot of people say, I want to get my own work, I want to have my own website, I want to do this, I want to do that, and it won't happen. You want to be like Mark Bennett. You want to believe in yourself, because I'm telling you right now, if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else will believe in you at all. You can't mute your own brilliance. You have to be the best you can be and go out and give it 100% and really, really, really just visualize what you want and then go out and make it happen. So there you go. That's Mark Bennett's story. Not just the guy who built illusions, not just the theatre pub host, but a magician who endured, pivoted, and built systems that last. And maybe Mark's biggest lesson: magic isn't just what you do with your hands, it's what you build with your head. So now it's over to you. Let me know down below if there's somebody else you'd like me to do a deep dive on. Let me know down below if you've ever been to Illusions or you've ever been to Smoke and Mirrors. Let me know down below if you've actually worked at Illusions and Smoke and Mirrors. Let me know if you've ever bought an MB Magic product. Let me know what you thought about Mark Bennett's career and Mark Bennett's approach to entrepreneurialism. Because honestly, we can learn a lot from Mark Bennett. So let me know down below. Let's get a dialogue going. Outside of that, thank you so much for watching. I will be back next week with another deep dive. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. You want to see more videos like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to join the Netrix. It's my online streaming platform for magicians, and you can get access immediately. I'll see you again. My name's Craig, and this is Magic TV.